Okay, so I've been thinking about whether or not I even wanted to share this story because it really is quite elaborate, more so than you would have thought, or I would have thought. And rather than try to lay it all out in some kind of order, I'm just going to give it a go here. Basically, the story begins with I am the closest thing to a hermit that you're probably ever going to meet, and that is not an exaggeration. My wife and I moved back to Ohio approximately 8 years ago, and I can count on one hand the number of social events that I've gone to. One was a wedding for her cousin. Another was to see her other cousin play drums in his band. I went to 2 reunions. When I first got back, 2013, I went to a reunion because I hadn't seen any of those people in probably 15 years because I'm a hermit. And then I went to another one 5 years later, or approximately 5 years later. So there you go. That's basically the gist of it here is if you were a betting person, the odds of any of this happening are about as slim as could be. You would have been wise to bet against me agreeing to go on a road trip. I haven't been on a road trip in 15 years where you just go somewhere with a buddy of mine. But you would have been smart to place your money on that. It's not going to happen, but unfortunately in this case you would have lost. So it started as me realizing that there was no way I was going to be able to get an accurate idea of how many people showed up at the Trump rally in Washington, D.C. I knew that CNN and the other corporate media, mainstream media, was going to say it was thousands of people, no matter how many people were there, and that they would probably try to film, real small scattered groups of people, maybe at the very beginning, and pretend that was what the whole rally was. And then I also knew that on the other side that people were going to say there were millions of people there because that's just the way it works. So I thought, what I'd like to do, being a hermit, is to send my buddy and another buddy down there. I'll pay the gas, I'll pay for the hotel. You guys go down there and give me and take some footage too so I can kind of gauge what's going on. Well, unfortunately, when I called my one friend, who I thought I would send with the other friend, he said the other guy had to work, but he said he would go if I would go. So I'm like, all right, man, you know what? I should probably just go. I should just go. I want to see how much support Trump has right now. And to be clear, I am not a person who voted for Trump. I don't vote. That's a whole other issue. My buddy that went with me did and is a very strong Trump supporter. And this is a weird thing because then it gets into, okay, so what is this all about with my position on Trump? My position on Trump is very clear. I feel that he has done more than any other president in my lifetime to make people aware of what Carol Quigley exposed back in 1966, which is this unelected narrative and policy setting bureaucratic apparatus that exists for one purpose, which is to ride roughshod over the sovereignty of nations. And that is what it was created to do. And we can go all the way back through all of it. I cover it all in Tragedy and Hope 101, which you can read or listen to for free at my website, joeplumber.com. So I'm not going to cover all that stuff right now. But, here, this is an interesting part in and of itself, that what Carol Quigley was literally in the belly of the beast there in Washington, D.C., teaching for 30 plus years, the administrative class. So that's something that I think a lot of people just don't absorb the gravity of that. This guy knew what he was talking about. So if for no other reason, you should familiarize yourself with his work. So anyway, bottom line is, he says, if you go, I'll go. And I say, all right, man, I'll go. It's only 6 hours. I was pleasantly surprised that it looked like we could make it in about 6.5 hours. So we're probably, 3-4 hours into the trip, and there's some brake lights ahead. And my buddy's like, what's going on up here? It's only at this part, we were on I-76, and it's only like a 2-lane turnpike at that point. And his eyes aren't that good. at this point, which he admits. I'm looking, I said, dude, it looks like a car is flipped. And we start getting up closer, and sure enough, there is a car literally upside down in the other lane. Somebody had stopped in front here. The car was flipped upside down in the right lane. We went in the left lane slowly and then pulled over. We were one of just a handful of people that were there. So I had a little flashlight on me because, I'm the co-pilot, so I might need to look for stuff on the map or whatever. So I get out, and I've got my flashlight. My buddy gets his bigger flashlight. He's got one in the van. We try opening the doors. The doors are locked. There's one other guy standing there at that point, I think. Maybe two. Maybe a couple other people. I mean, it's kind of tunnel vision at this point. The doors are locked, and, all the windows are closed. So my buddy goes to the... well, here's an interesting thing. The car's upside down, so you think you're actually on the passenger side, but you're on the driver's side. He goes over to the driver's side and is looking in and doesn't see anything. I see a foot on the driver's side in the front. So I think what happened is I think the driver actually got knocked out because he wasn't moving. And then within, I don't know, the time is it's hard to imagine what the time was. It could have been a minute, it could have been 3 minutes before it sounded like, or we saw some movement of this foot, and my buddy was like, okay, well, stay away from the window. I'm going to break the window so we can get you out of there. So he breaks the window. He and another guy managed to get the door open, and out pops this fellow who looks very disoriented. And he's got some blood on him, but aside from that, he seems disoriented, which is kind of understandable. And that's not the weird part of it. We're like, okay, you doing all right? Is there anybody else with you? And he's like not really with it just yet. And then there's a dog barking. And we're like, are you kidding me? Is there a dog in there? He's like, yeah, my dog. And then all of a sudden, you see this head pop out, and it's a pretty good-sized German Shepherd, and he's not happy. So the first question it wasn't my buddy who asked, but it was one of these other people that are there. It's like, does the dog bite? And as incoherent as this guy is, he doesn't hesitate. Yes, he bites. Okay, great. So this is a problem because we need to get the guy out of the car, but we also need to get the dog out of the car. The dog doesn't have a leash, and we're on a turnpike. And that could be bad. Obviously, we don't want the dog to run and get run over. It's amazing that the dog is fine. The dog is standing there. He's looking pretty strong, looking pretty good. So normal people, when they see a dog that looks like it wants to bite them, probably want to stay away from the dog. I'm not normal, I guess. I'm thinking, all right, I can tell the dog is scared, and I don't want the dog to get hit, so it's my job to make sure that I don't get bit, but we got to figure out how to help this disoriented driver get this scared and freaked out dog away from this car, over into the berm, or over on the right. There were some trees, there was a hill and there were some trees. Let's get this dog tied off over there. So we're looking for something to tie the dog off with. There was some fabric. The guy was trying to do it. I went to reach, and the dog made it clear he didn't like that. I was like, okay, all right. So let's think. And this fabric doesn't look like it's really going to work. So somebody showed up with a tie down, with just the strap from a tie down. It's like, okay, this will definitely work. So again, like I said, everybody else is like, okay, this pretty good sized dog. He's clearly not happy with anybody getting near the owner or him. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll try to, I'm going to try to do this. So we get over to the side and I don't know. It's like, okay, cool. So we got this, and we're gonna try to get the collar and whatever. And I apparently got just close enough, and yep, he bit me. And then the owner jumps on the dog, and he's holding the dog down. He's like, I'm so sorry. And the dog is literally looking up at me like, growling and mad and all this other stuff. So all I'm thinking is, No big deal. I'm fine. Don't worry about it. Let's, we're still trying to accomplish something here. And I'm comforting the dog. I'm telling, it's okay, Bane. I know the dog's name by now. I'm like, Bane, it's okay. It's okay. It's all right. No problem. No problem. So the dog starts to calm down again. So that's cool. So we get him off in the grass, and this goes on. This trying to get, it probably went on for about at least 10 minutes before firefighters start showing up and all this. And keep in mind, the whole time that the story is the same. It's clear that me and the driver and the dog are trying to get the dog, or me and the driver are trying to get the dog squared away so everybody else can feel more comfortable. One of the firefighters did come up, but he kept his distance and was helpful. But it was a mess. It was disorganized, but we knew that we had to try to get this dog tied off. So finally, we get the tie down. We get ready to get the dog tied up, and it's like, okay, cool. Okay, got me again. That was better. And I just want to clarify. The dog wasn't biting me like he wants to attack. It wasn't like a vicious, I'm attacking. He was biting me because he wanted me to get away. So, get away. Keep your distance, whatever. And then so this starts the thing with the apologizing again. I'm sorry. I'm like, it's okay. And I'm telling the dog, it's okay, Bane. Don't worry about it. And I think I won him over the second time because he didn't bite me again, and he actually stood by me a little bit at this point. He was kind of like, okay, well, this dude seems okay and whatever. So we managed to get him tied to a tree, and we think everything is okay. So now we're gonna get the guy. In between all this, I have called his family twice and left 2 messages. So I just figured I'd throw that in there. And so we get the dog tied off. We start walking towards the thing, and here comes the dog. He slipped his collar. So anyway, I'm trying to basically provide an idea of how crazy it all was. It was kind of crazy. I don't know how long all this went on. It could have been 10 minutes. It could have been 20 minutes. But the bottom line is the cops show up. The dog had recently slipped his collar. He slipped his collar. I went back, had to unknot the collar from the tree. We untie the tie down from the tree, get the collar unknotted that we had tied that up, get the collar back on the dog. We walk back. Now the cops are here. And the first thing one of the cops asks is he friendly? And I say, no, he's not. I said, he's scared. He's scared. So, let's just keep that in mind. And she, the cop, I don't know if it was immediately, it was pretty soon after, says, we've got a car here, a canine car. If he can get the dog out of the car later, then let's just put him in if the owner will be able to get the dog out of the car later, then let's do that. And I said, okay, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And he said, yeah, I'll be able to get the dog out of the car. So at that point, it was done. It was that as far as I was concerned, okay, the dog is safe, and all the rest of and the driver doesn't have to worry about killing his dog. I mean, he was really fortunate. He didn't kill himself. This is one of the things. He was scared and freaked out, and I said, dude, look, man, I'm guessing he was in his 20s. I said, you didn't kill yourself, you didn't kill your dog, and you didn't hurt anybody else, so it can't be any better than that. Because when he was having me call his mom, he had me call his mom, and he had me call his sister. He was upset, obviously. So anyway, that's pretty eventful for the hermit. So we get back. I get in the car, and we're on our way. And then I got a call. I didn't get a hold of anybody when I first called, but then the mother called, and then the sister called, and I was able to give them information. My buddy yelled, call the highway patrol. They'll be able to tell you exactly where it was. I told him mile marker 160 something as I thought where it was. But anyway, the bottom line is, a few days later, I texted them, and the dog is fine, and the driver is fine, And that's about as good as it gets, I suppose. And then also, I wanted to include the fact that when I got to Washington, when I was in the hotel and I was thinking about all of it, I just was really grateful that I went, because I felt that we were in the right place at the right time and could have prevented that from being worse than it was. And it feels good to feel like you were helpful. And I thought, well, shit, if nothing else happens, I'm glad I went, because that was all weird. That was all really weird. So that's that part of it. Now, let's get to the Trump rally. As stated, I wanted to go because I wanted a first-hand account of how many people actually are going to show up. I know lots of people show up for Trump rallies, but they don't have to drive hundreds of miles to get to those Trump rallies, and they expect Trump to be there. I mean, they want to see him. He's going to be there and he's going to be speaking. Neither of those apply here. And I was actually hoping a lot of people showed up, because I view Trump supporters as people, if I have to choose between the two sides, I believe they are people who are paying closer attention to this idea of a media that lies without any shame, that manipulates. They're aware of how the tech companies are censoring freedom of speech. They are more aware of this idea of, as I stated earlier, I think I said this in the beginning, they're more aware of this supranational policy and narrative setting infrastructure that Quigley exposed. You know, these people set out to control all habitable portions of the world. And what that means is, it's like super imperialism. The people who are going to be setting the narrative for all of the nations in the world are these unelected bureaucrats and experts that you're going to find in the United Nations. You're going to find in the WHO. You're going to find them flexing their muscles in the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. You know, you want the money, you're going to do what we say you do. That kind of thing. So, if for no other reason, in that sense, I feel more hopeful about this group of people being awake and being able to help with what ultimately a lot of us who aren't still participating in the voting process are trying to achieve. And my buddy asked me, why don't you vote? And I said, because I'm trying to affect change through other means. Social and political change through other means. If it was just as simple as voting for me, that would be easier than what I'm doing. But I don't judge people who vote. I understand that people are going to vote. So to me, it makes sense to try to put information out there that will help them see the true nature of the system as much as possible, so that they are not easily manipulated into supporting things that are antithetical to everyone's freedom. So anyway, I'm going to tell you what I saw. First and foremost, I know that the numbers range anywhere from 5,000, as I predicted. I think I saw a couple mainstream news places saying 5,000, up to over 1 million. My humble estimate is it was about, I don't think it could have possibly been less than 100,000, and I think it could have very easily been a couple 100,000. And I base that on the fact that I actually went to Google Maps and I measured out the square footage of Freedom Plaza, the entire area. If you look at some of the pictures where it was filled, that was another thing. I thought, okay, well, somebody could Photoshop. Well, this wasn't Photoshopped. I was there. It was packed. Freedom Plaza was packed, and then also Pennsylvania Avenue had tens of thousands of people, and Constitution Avenue had tens of thousands of people, and in front of the Supreme Court there were thousands and thousands of people, and on side streets there were thousands and thousands of people. Okay, so, but just in that one area, this is kind of what I gauge my absolute minimum on. I measured from 13th Street to 14th Street, and in between the buildings there, and you have roughly 5 acres, and if you allow 3.5 square feet per person, which is more than reasonable, I think, and actually the area is a little bit bigger, and there's, the pictures that I saw, they were cut off, and there are areas that it isn't including. Bottom line is, if you roughly estimate about 5 acres of area that were covered in people. It's not just the roadway. It's up all the way up to the buildings, and it's starting from 13th Street all the way to 14th Street. That's what you can see. You've got about 60,000 people right there, and it could have been less than 3.5 square feet per person, and there absolutely could have been more people outside of the shot. So that's 60,000 right there. And that's not including a mile and a half of a wide road. You could figure the square footage out on that. That's I'm sure that's at least another 7 to 10 acres right there, just the roadway. It's probably more. If it's more than a mile and a half and it's 5 lanes of road, which I think in many areas it looked even maybe like it might have been wider than that. I can't be 100% sure. I'll just tell you that I walked that distance to the Supreme Court, and there were a lot of people on that road. It wasn't just the people in Freedom Plaza. We walked to the Supreme Court before Freedom Plaza emptied out, and there was already thousands and thousands of people going that direction, and there were already a lot of people at the Supreme Court when we got there, not to mention side roads and all that other stuff. So I just wanted to say, like, that's the people that were there. Now I want to talk about the fact that the way the media portrays these people, as anybody with any sense probably already knows, is so wrong that it's criminal. Because I didn't see a single Nazi. I didn't see any swastikas. I saw black people. I saw Asian people. I saw Hispanic people. I saw gay people who were being flamboyantly gay. I saw no hostility towards any of these people. All I felt when I was there was a feeling of unity and purpose. There was some of the, this is another thing, it's hard to try to figure out what to focus on. When there was some speaking going on in Freedom Plaza, there were some people who were doing the Stop the Steal kind of thing, and there were chants for that, which was, for me, I'm not terribly thrilled with that, because it leads, if they're unable to prove that fraud actually took place and turn this over, then I think that can take the wind out of people's sails. I am so much more interested in that. One of these speakers, I didn't get his name, but what he was basically doing, it was talking about these institutions, these opinion forming agencies, as Carol Quigley referred to them. This is how when he was explaining it, secret control, secret political, economic, and journalistic control was how these people were going to manipulate society into accepting the things that they wanted them to accept. This guy was basically touching on some of that stuff. He didn't go back as far. He didn't go, we know that this all started, if you've read Tragedy and Hope 101 and you follow Quigley's work, you know this all goes back to the inquiry, at least to the inquiry in the early 1900s. He was more in the middle, talking about these institutions that grew up, but it's true, it started there, and then they just started creating all of these instruments. That's the word. They are the instruments. So the UN is an instrument. The Federal Reserve System is an instrument. The World Health Organization is an instrument. UNESCO is an instrument. These are all instruments that these people created. That's the beauty of learning the history of it. You can see who started it and then the line of succession. Anyway, when he was talking, the crowd got quiet. And it wasn't just about rah, rah, rah. And it wasn't just, it had a different energy. It had a serious energy, and that made me really happy. It did, because it made me realize that it is about the freedom. It isn't just about, or at least in that moment, all those people were united in the sense that, look, we are here because we know what is happening and we want to stop it. We want our children to grow up in a world that is at least as free as what we enjoyed, but preferably freer. And we are now headed in the wrong direction. And that was fantastic. It made me very happy. And again, it's one of those reasons why I feel, if you're going to tell me who I feel more connected to, I feel more connected to these people who have that sense. It isn't just the way it's being sold on the other side, where, okay, we're going to fight the evildoers. This is a legitimate problem that we are facing here. This is a legitimate problem that isn't being exaggerated. The problem of lost sovereignty. You're witnessing it right now. You're witnessing that policy and narrative setting apparatus control the globe with COVID-19. This is a beautiful example of where you're watching something that is insane and makes absolutely no sense. And the actions that are being taken, like here in Ohio where I'm at, the governor again imposing a curfew and locking everyone down, shelter in place. It is absolutely insane. And it's not legal. It's not. Even under emergency powers, there's only so much time you're allowed to do this. It doesn't matter, and it's not justified. If you followed this and you realize, okay, 60 million people around the globe die every year, and we all manage to live normal lives, but now this year with COVID, it could reach 61.5 million. 60 million to 61.5 million, and our entire political, economic, and social world has to be completely turned upside down. Who does that make sense to? Anyway, okay, this is probably going on long enough. I hope that I know it has. The one other thing that I wanted to mention was there was a girl. Well, no, there were two instances where I felt uncomfortable. The crowd was huge, all races, all sexualities, everybody seemingly united in something higher than, I could be reading into that. But like I said, I was going to say something higher than just the Trump election thing. I believe that was, well, if nothing else, that's what I was most inspired by, was as stated when that other man started talking and it changed tone. So that exists in that crowd, and that was awesome. The only time I felt even remotely uncomfortable was when there were a couple groups that, we were there. I was walking around for 4 hours, and maybe during that 4-hour period twice, I heard a couple groups who were yelling, "Fuck Antifa! Fuck Antifa!" It was just unnecessary. It was kind of a hostile. It wasn't like meant to intimidate anybody there. It just wasn't the energy. The energy there was different. Clearly, if Antifa would have came in there and started beating people up, then we understand what would have happened in that moment, and then that's totally makes sense. It was just it was a bit of a hostile energy. So there was that issue, and then there was also, but it was just a couple times, and it wasn't like everybody was getting on board, and it wasn't like that at all. It was just a handful of people doing it, and there wasn't, it didn't start some big chant, if that's what it was supposed to do. It didn't. And then there was like some kind of preacher saying all the Trump supporters are going to burn in hell because they accept the queers and whatever else they were saying. And it didn't have, people were just walking past it. I'm sure there were probably a couple people paying attention, but wasn't anything significant that I saw. So there was that. Oh, and one more thing. I think this is important. This is telling. I'm going to end on this. There was a girl, an Asian girl, walking around with a "Fuck Trump" sign. Fuck Trump. And true to form, there was, although like one woman was going, oh, that's real classy, oh, that's real classy, and another guy started talking to her. I mean, nobody was spitting on her. Nobody was throwing drinks in her face. Nobody was threatening to beat her up or hurt her. She was expressing her opinion, and she's walking around with her "fuck Trump" sign, and she was left alone, at least what I saw of it. Basically, let's say I was walking towards you. She came from behind me with her, I heard a little bit of commotion, the lady behind me saying, oh, that's real classy, that's real classy. So I turned around, and then here she comes with her "fuck Trump" sign, and she gets in front of me, and she's walking pretty quick away from me at this point, and this is kind of funny. She meets up with this not older gentleman. She's probably 22, probably a college student. This guy's probably my age, 40s to 50s. I'd say he was 45 to 50 something, and he looks at her. So again, she's walking away from me. This guy's walking away from me. He was already in front of me, and she's catching up to him. And he's like, look at what's going on here. What is your problem? What makes you think that there's anything wrong with any of these people? Everybody's peaceful, everybody's this. And she says something along the lines, because Trump supporters are racist, or something like that. Looks at him, okay, so it's bad enough on his face, because I've already explained to you what the situation was, but right at that moment, walking towards these two who are walking away from me, is a black guy with his buddy. So, and they're probably in their 20s too, and they hear her say that. So they see, right at the same moment, they glance over at her, they see the sign, they hear her say that to the other guy, because Trump supporters are racist or something like that. And then right then she turns, she sees the black guy. As the black guy's going, he nudges his buddy, and they both like literally laugh, like, yeah, oh yeah, we're both racist, like that. And then she just looks at him and goes, fuck you too. And she just kept walking, and that was that. And then she disappeared, and that was the end. That was, as far as I'm concerned, that was all that I saw of it. So this is my longest post ever, and I try to always keep everything to 10 minutes. I knew there was no way in hell that was going to happen this time. I don't know if this has anything other than entertainment value. I hope it does. I hope it provides some insight. And as soon as I turn this off, I'll remember something else that I wanted to say, but I don't have it right now, so that's that. That was my eventful trip to Washington, D.C.